Welcome to the Teninet Indigenous Wisdom Research Center. I am your host, Author Teninet Setegn. In this broadcast series, we explore the profound mysteries within our research. Ethiopian esoteric philosophy and alchemy. Our journey into channeling hidden wisdom begins now.
What if I told you that right now, like as you're just going about your day, commuting, working, making coffee, there is this completely hidden, decentralized network of exactly 40,000 people positioned all over the globe?
I mean, that immediately sounds like the premise for a massive geopolitical thriller, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the kind of thing with cork boards and red string connecting all the photons.
See, no, it sounds like a conspiracy theory waiting to happen. But here is where the concept completely breaks the mold, because physically, these 40,000 people do not know each other.
Right.
They don't have, secret handshakes. They don't use encrypted messaging apps. And they definitely aren't meeting in smoke-filled underground rooms in Geneva or whatever.
There's no secret society rings.
Right, no rings. In fact,
yes.
They are entirely connected through a shared high-dimensional frequency of thought. And we aren't talking about obscure figures here. We're talking about individuals sitting in top-tier government positions and highly influential spiritual roles worldwide.
It's wild because it describes a network bound not by physical proximity or, sworn oaths or shared bank accounts, but by a precise resonance of consciousness.
Yeah.
It challenges the fundamental way we think power and coordination actually operate in the real world.
It really does, and that is the staggering premise we're exploring today. So we have a pretty dense, fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive, and it's entirely anchored by two foundational texts. Those are The Rise of Makela Sab and The Secret of Ethiopian Philosophy.
Both incredible works.
Yeah, really dense stuff. But our mission today is to dig into this highly intricate framework known as the Addmesh philosophy, specifically focusing on its fifth core principle.
Right, the fifth principle.
Exactly, and that principle states, quote, "It has its own living people living in this world."
And just to set the context for you listening, we need to be really transparent about where this material comes from. This deep dive is an official broadcast project of the Teninet Indigenous Wisdom Research Center.
Yes, and to really grasp what that center is doing, we have to look at its architect, right?
Absolutely.
The primary researcher and founder is Author Teninet Setegn, who is also known by his Christian name, Wold Rufael. And his story is, well, it doesn't start in some sterile academic laboratory.
No, not at all.
He grew up in Debri Site, Ethiopia, and he spent his early years really immersed in the natural reality of that region, herding sheep on the mountains, spending time near Lake Hora.
Right, and the turning point in his life came through these really profound, transformative spiritual experiences.
Yeah, these weren't just abstract musings.
Exactly. They were tied to very specific geographic locations, particularly places like the Kidane Mahurit Church and the nearby Mount Air. And those experiences basically set him on a path to formalize this massive body of ancient hidden wisdom.
He essentially took these vast, high-dimensional spiritual concepts and successfully anchored them into a physical, legally recognized institution.
Which is no small feat.
Not at all. The Teninet Indigenous Wisdom Research Center was officially granted legal personality as a local organization in Ethiopia back in 2020. They operate under the registry number 5128.
It really represents this incredible bridge.
Yeah.
Because you have profound, isolated spiritual revelation on a mountaintop on one side.
And then a structured, legally registered research organization aiming to present that hidden wisdom to all of humanity on the other. I do want to push on that bridge a little bit, though, because moving from ancient mystical texts to a registered research center makes sense to me. I can follow that logic.
Right.
But how do we leap from a philosophy in a book to claiming there are actual living people walking among us today? Because, every philosophy is read by living people, right?
Mm-hmm.
What makes this Addmesh principle so radically different?
Well, the difference really lies in the definition of what Addmesh actually is.
Right.
When you study Platonism or Stoicism today, you are studying an artifact.
Right, it's historical.
Exactly. You're looking back at what people used to think and trying to apply it to your modern life.
Yeah.
But the fifth core principle, it has its own people living in this world that establishes that Addmesh is not an artifact. It is an active, breathing lineage currently operating on Earth.
Okay, so when you say lineage, my mind immediately goes to genetics, like DNA, bloodlines, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that is the standard human assumption, right? But the texts completely reject that physical limitation. The philosophy posits that there is this central humanity, which is referred to as Mekeli Sab.
Mengekele Sab.
And the descendants of this central humanity are called the kindred of Mekeli Sab.
Oh.
But they are spiritual inheritors, not necessarily genetic ones.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they are defined entirely by the fact that they live by a specific high-dimensional thought.
I'm struggling to picture this practically, to be honest. Let's define high-dimensional thought, because we throw that phrase around and it can start to sound like, I don't know, sci-fi buzzwords. What does it actually mean to think in a high-dimensional way compared to how you or I might be thinking right now?
Okay, think about a maze.
Right?
If you are stuck inside the maze, your thought process is strictly binary. Do I turn left or do I turn right?
Right.
If I hit a wall, I lose. If I find the exit, I win. That is low-dimensional thinking at zero-sum. It's based on immediate obstacles and just basic survival.
Because you can't see the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, high-dimensional thought is the equivalent of hovering above the maze. You aren't just solving for the next left turn, you know. You understand the architecture of the entire structure.
Wow, okay.
You see how the entrance and the exit are actually part of the exact same design. So in the context of Addmesh, someone operating with this high-dimensional thought isn't bogged down by the binary conflicts of everyday life. You know, my team versus your team, my nation versus your nation.
Right, they've transcended that.
Yeah, they're processing reality through a lens of supreme unifying truth.
So they might hold a regular job, they might look completely unremarkable on the street, but internally they aren't processing reality the way the rest of us are.
Yes, and what's fascinating here is that the text makes a very sharp, crucial distinction between geography and this internal spiritual state.
How so?
Well, the author points out that there is a profound difference between the homeland of Mekeli Sab and the actual house or kindred of Mekeli Sab.
With the homeland being modern-day Ethiopia.
Correct. The homeland refers to the geographical territories where this central humanity originally lived.
Right.
But physical proximity does not equal spiritual inheritance.
I see.
You could be born in that homeland, you know, you could be standing on that specific soil right now and still be entirely trapped in the maze. You could be operating under standard worldly paradigms or much lower level spiritual thoughts.
So you're just a tourist in the homeland, spiritually speaking.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. The house or the kindred of Mekeli Sab consists only of those specific people whose souls actually carry these spiritual facets.
It's all internal.
Yes. It is their internal state, their alignment with this supreme wisdom that makes them the kindred. So they could be physically located anywhere on the planet.
But if the qualification is purely internal, how do you even begin to quantify a network like that? Like, you can't run a census on people's souls.
You really can't.
Yet, the secret of Ethiopian philosophy actually puts a hard number on it. It claims there are exactly 40,000 of these chosen ones currently living on Earth.
And it goes further than just giving a head count, too. It specifies that these 40,000 individuals are not hidden away in caves meditating in absolute isolation.
Right.
According to the source material, they hold significant roles in global governments and major spiritual institutions. They are literally embedded in the very systems that govern our world.
Okay, let me just stop you there. Because if I'm listening to this, my skepticism alarms are absolutely blaring right now.
Sure, understandably.
40,000 people sitting in top-tier global government and spiritual positions acting as a cohesive group. I mean, if they are scattered across different nations and institutions, how do they actually coordinate?
Right, it's a logical question.
Do they all jump on a secure satellite call at midnight? How can you have an active network if they never communicate with each other?
Well, it requires completely abandoning our conventional understanding of organization. So think about a murmuration of starlings. Have you ever seen thousands of birds flying together in the sky, making those massive, sweeping, synchronized shapes?
Oh, yeah, it's incredible. It looks like one giant organism just shifting in the air.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is no leader bird calling out flight plans.
Right.
They don't have a communication system telling the bird in the back to turn left. Every single bird is simply responding to the immediate atmospheric pressure and the minute movements of the birds closest to it, based on an identical internal instinct.
That makes a lot of sense.
They move the perfectly coordinated network because they share the exact same internal operating system.
They aren't following a specific plan. They're just responding to the same environment using the same code.
Yes. According to the philosophy, Physically, these 40,000 individuals do not know each other at all. There are no physical traits that give them away. Their connection is entirely spiritual.
So how are they recognized then?
The text explains that they are recognized by great spiritual figures solely through their high-dimensional thoughts and their spiritual rank. Because they are all operating on the exact same supreme frequency of wisdom, their actions naturally and inevitably align.
I want to ground this in a real-world hypothetical, just to see if I truly understand.
Sure, let's do it.
Let's say two of these 40,000 people happen to be high-ranking trade officials in two different countries that are currently locked in a bitter economic war.
Okay.
If they can't call each other to coordinate, how does this high-dimensional thought actually dictate their actions in that specific scenario?
Well, instead of acting on the lower-level thought of, my country must crush your country to win, both officials operating independently but on the same frequency of wisdom would naturally advocate for policies that bypass the binary conflict.
They wouldn't even play the zero-sum game.
Exactly. They would introduce solutions that elevate the human condition across both populations. They wouldn't have to coordinate the specific tariffs or treaties. Their shared internal frequency dictates that they will both independently move toward a resolution that serves a higher unifying purpose.
That's fascinating.
When you are plugged into the same fundamental truth, you inevitably move in the same direction.
Okay, I need to pause here for a second just to lay down a marker for you listening. Because the text explicitly describes these 40,000 individuals as actively holding major global government and institutional positions, we're definitely treading into areas that people usually associate with heavy politics.
Yeah, it gets sensitive.
And as your guys on this deep dive, our job is to impartially report the framework of this philosophy exactly as the author laid it out. We're exploring the architectural claims of the source material. We are not endorsing any specific political, religious, or ideological viewpoints, nor are we trying to validate specific policies. We are purely looking at how this worldview is structured.
Right, and structurally, it proposes a form of influence that is completely invisible to standard human perception.
Completely off the radar.
You cannot track this network through campaign finance records or leaked emails or diplomatic cables. It can only be perceived if you possess the spiritual capacity to recognize that specific frequency of thought.
Right. So if we accept the premise of the text that this invisible murmuration of 40,000 spiritually connected people is currently hovering in the halls of global power, the obvious question is, what are they actually doing right now? What is their mission?
To find that answer, we really have to turn to the rise of Mayake Sab. The text explicitly states that right now their primary action is waiting.
Just waiting.
They're waiting in patience.
Waiting for what, exactly?
For an event the philosophy calls the rise. The author explains that for the last 700 years, the high-dimensional thought of Mayake Sab has actually been in a profound period of silence.
Wait, 7 centuries? What happened 700 years ago to cause a silence that massive?
Starting around the end of the 12th century and the beginning of the 13th century, the text states that Ethiopia lost its spiritual position in the world.
Okay.
It essentially went backward, losing its rank of honor.
But why, though? You don't just misplace a high-dimensional thought overnight.
Well, think back to the maze analogy.
Okay.
If the bandwidth of human consciousness becomes completely saturated with people panicking inside the maze, fighting over dead ends, hoarding resources, launching crusades, expanding empires, the higher frequency just gets drowned out.
There's too much noise.
Yes. The people of the homeland territories lost their connection to this specific spiritual blessing because the lower-level combative thoughts became overwhelmingly loud. The supreme thought didn't vanish, but it went silent in the human sphere. The world essentially forgot it even existed.
But the text is claiming that this 700-year silence is finite, and these 40,000 people are in place because that silence is about to break.
Exactly.
And this is where the geography comes roaring back into the picture in a very specific way. Because the source material doesn't just vague post about a coming change. It pinpoints the exact physical epicenter of this awakening. It all points back to the Air Mountains in Ethiopia.
Which perfectly closes the loop on Author Teninet Setegn's journey, if you think about it.
Oh, wow, you're right.
The very mountains that anchored his own transformative spiritual experiences are the same mountains identified as the starting point for this massive global shift.
That's an incredible connection. The texts declare that the echoes of this high-dimensional thought will first be heard ringing out from Mount Error. And from that specific epicenter, it will spread through the homeland territories and eventually to all of mankind.
The huge claim.
And so the 40,000 are positioned around the globe not to trigger it themselves, but to facilitate and respond to this awakening when the frequency finally returns.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to clarify what the rise actually looks like, according to Addmesh.
Right.
Because in standard earthly history, when an ancient power rises, it usually involves like military conquest, violent overthrow, or one nation achieving geopolitical domination over another.
Yeah, it's always about planting a flag and claiming the throne.
Exactly, but the philosophy categorizes that as incredibly primitive thinking.
Interesting.
To understand the rise, you have to understand how Addmesh structures human thought. The texts outline 7 distinct levels of honor or consciousness the human beings operate within.
Okay, walk me through these levels, because if wisdom is at the very top, what is sitting at the bottom?
So the first most basic level is the individual thought. That's pure survival, selfishness, just what is good for me.
Okay.
The second level expands slightly to family thought, protecting your immediate kin. The third is societal thought, the norms and protection of your local tribe or community.
Okay, so each level is really just expanding the circle of who you care about.
Yes, but it also expands the scale of the conflicts you engage in. The fourth level is national thought. This is where we see patriotism, borders, and state versus state warfare.
Right.
Then the fifth level is religious thought.
Wait, give me an example of the difference between national and religious thought in this context.
Okay, a national thought says, my country's borders must expand to secure resources, even if it means invading yours. A religious thought says, my specific doctrine is the only path to salvation, and your doctrine is an offense to the divine. It's a higher level of abstraction than just a physical border, but it still inherently relies on division and exclusion to define itself.
That makes total sense.
And then the sixth level is spiritual thought, which begins to recognize broader, unseen connections, but it can still be somewhat localized or fragmented.
Which leaves the seventh level.
The seventh level, sitting at the very top, is wisdom. The thought of Meekly Sab operates entirely at this seventh level.
Wow. So most of the news we watch every single day, the wars, the partisan gridlock, the cultural battles.
All of it is happening at levels 4 and 5.
Hmm.
Nations fighting nations, ideologies fighting ideologies. But when the rise happens, when this high-dimensional thought of wisdom emerges from Mount Air, it doesn't enter the battlefield at level 4 to fight other nations.
Right.
It bypasses the lower levels of division entirely.
It doesn't defeat the lower levels, it just makes them obsolete.
Yes. It is a fundamental elevation of global consciousness. The texts explain that wisdom embraces all people according to the level of honor they have currently reached, but it pulls them upward.
That's beautiful.
It offers humanity a way out of the endless cycles of tribulation caused by those lower-level zero-sum games. It grants freedom and victory to mankind by changing the very nature of what victory even means.
So the 40,000 kindreds sitting in global institutions aren't a sleeper cell waiting for a command to attack?
Not at all.
They are more like tuning forks. They have been silently vibrating at the 7th level of wisdom, waiting for the primary note to finally be struck again at Mount Error.
That's a great analogy.
And when it sounds, they will instantly resonate with it, amplifying that supreme frequency across all the world's governments and spiritual systems.
It's an incredibly hopeful vision, fundamentally.
It really is. It's a phenomenal journey we've taken today through this material. I mean, we started with the foundational vision of author Teninet Setegn, exploring how a profound personal experience on a mountain translated into the official establishment of the Teninet Indigenous Wisdom Research Center.
Right.
We dissected the 5th principle of Addmesh, this reality of a living, breathing, philosophical lineage that isn't bound by genetics or geography.
Yeah.
And we followed that thread to an unseen global murmuration of 40,000 kindred of Michaeli Saber, silently holding their positions, waiting for a 700-year silence to finally break with the rises echoing from Mount Air.
It is a worldview that really forces you to question the very foundation of how we perceive reality and influence.
Totally.
Like, look around. We live in a society that is completely obsessed with the visible. We are captivated by physical appearances, loud political debates, the endless screaming of the daily news cycle, and, the people shouting the loudest on our screens.
We really are.
We assume that noise equals power. But this philosophy offers a profound, deeply comforting alternative, really. That the true steering currents of human history, the actual forces that will elevate mankind, might be entirely invisible. True power might be based simply on the frequency and dimension of your thoughts.
It implies that the quietest things in the room might actually be the most powerful, which leaves you with something to seriously mull over as you step away from this deep dive today.
Yeah.
If an entire global network of 40,000 people can move in perfect lockstep, seamlessly coordinating through a shared high-dimensional thought without ever speaking a single word to each other, what unseen networks of thought are you unknowingly plugged into right now?
That's the real question.
Are you operating on the frequency of the maze or the frequency of wisdom? And how is that invisible broadcast shaping the reality you experience every single day?